I actually graduated from Indiana Wesleyan with my undergrad in psychology and leadership, and then my graduate degree in addictions counseling, and went on to work here for a number of years. So I love being back on campus, and I come here often and annoy the people up in the Center for Life. What is it now? Okay. Up in the Great Center, that's above Wildcat. And so it's fun to be back here with you again and talk a little bit about empowerment and servant leadership, two things that I'm really passionate about. When I was a little girl, and pretty much for as long as I can remember, I've been two things. I've been an idealist, and I've been a planner. And those of you that know me know that those things are true about me. When I was about 5, I think I was 5, when my mom bought me my first personal calendar. And it was really exciting to me. And she, I think, got it for me because she was tired of me asking her multiple times throughout the day where we were going and what we were doing and when we would be done and what was next. And so she got me my planner, and I would write in it, and I'd look at it every day, and I don't know if I used pictures and words or what, but I knew what was going on every day because my mom got me a personnel calendar. She also let me take her kitchen bowls, like mixing bowls, kitchen mixing bowls, and line the sidewalk outside our house with them right before it was about to storm because I wanted to collect rainwater in them, and because I was pretty convinced actually, that if I used rainwater to bathe in and wash my hair, then it would certainly be purer than the water that comes through icky pipes, and my hair would be very soft and fairy-like. So my mom let me use all her kitchen bowls in the middle of our house was downtown in this town, and line the sidewalk with them. And then she helped me collect it and take a bath and all of that. There was also a time where I had planned for several days this thing that I thought would be really cool and like adventurous and romantic, and I was probably 8 or 9, and I had this book that I wanted to read, but I wanted to read it in just the right setting, like create the right environment. So I waited until it was about to rain again. There's something about rain, right? And I put on my coat, and I got a little chair, and I put it on our side porch, which was not enclosed, right? Put it on our side porch, put on my coat, grabbed my library literature, walked out to the porch, sat there, and read my book in the pouring rain, because that's cool, right? And my mom came, and she made sure that I had a snack, and that if I needed a drink, that I got one. And when I came back in and was soaking wet, my library book was all wet, she just asked me how my book was. And so I grew up with like this amazing amount of freedom, and creativity was allowed to be released in our home. And so as I grew older, I was really perplexed when I found out that not everybody's moms let them do that. Like, not everybody had scratched up kitchen bowls in their kitchen because they sat on the sidewalk all night collecting rainwater. But my mom knew something about empowerment. She knew that I needed it. And she knew that she wanted it for me. She knew that it included unleashing creativity, and she knew that it meant that failure had to be permissible, or that something that some people thought was failure needed to be permissible. You might not think that a wet library book is a really good idea, right? But my mom just asked me how it was and allowed me to do that. So today, I want to talk to you about servant leadership, and I want to talk to you about empowerment, because I think that just like my mom knew, I know, because of her and lots of other people in my life, one being Bill Millard over here, that servant leadership is not just the best way to lead because Jesus said so, but it's the most effective and efficient way to create positive change in our world. Robert Greenleaf in 1970 wrote an essay called "The Servant as Leader," where he coined the phrase servant leadership. I'm going to tell you what he said about it. He said that the difference between a servant first and a leader first leader manifests itself in the care taken by the servant first to make sure that other people's highest priority needs are being served. The best test, he's saying the best test to see if you're the servant first type of leader, and the most difficult to administer is, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? And what is the effect on the least privileged in society? Will they benefit, or at least not be further deprived? So here's the deal. Empowerment is simply increasing the strength or capacity of a person or group of people. It's essentially making them stronger, healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more capable. So what happens is we have an agent, a person, a servant leader, if you will, who goes around increasing the strengths and capabilities of others. And to me, an idealist, I want to do this just because it sounds really great, right? It sounds like the best way to do things. But some of you might be like, why is it even necessary, right? Like, why is empowerment, why do we need to worry about it as Christian leaders? C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity said that they, Christians, think that God invented and made the universe like a man making a picture or composing a tune. A painter is not a picture, he says, and he does not die if his picture is destroyed. If you do not take the distinction between good and bad very seriously, then it is easy to say that anything you find in this world is part of God. But of course, if you think some things are really bad and God is really good, then you must believe that God is separate from the world and that some of the things we see in it are contrary to his will. When confronted with cancer or a slum, the pantheist, or someone who believes that God is in everything, can say, if you could only see it from the divine point of view, you would realize that this also is God. And the Christian replies, don't talk damned nonsense. For Christianity is a fighting religion. It thinks God made the world, that space and time, heat and cold, and all the colors and tastes, and all the animals and vegetables are things that God made up out of his head, as a man makes up a story. But it also thinks that a great many things have gone wrong with the world, and that God made, and that God insists very loudly on our putting them right again. So the reason that we need empowerment, the reason that we need it to be exercised from a servant leadership paradigm, is because there's a great many things that are wrong with the world. And it's our job to make them right again. And if we want to do that in the most effective and efficient way possible, then it demands a servant leadership paradigm or mindset or belief and the change strategy of empowerment. For us, I think that the reason that we need to do this is because that Jesus, first of all, Jesus modeled it for us and taught us how to do it. And secondly, it's the way that we're going to create, again, real, sustainable, positive change. So empowerment, like Greenleaf said, is actually the evidence of servant leadership. You can find a servant leader by looking at their followers, by seeing if the world around them is better, if it's healthier, if it's stronger, if it's freer, if it's more autonomous. So here's the thing. Empowerment and servant leadership aren't just things that we do, right? They're ways of being and believing that our actions arise from and come out of. That also makes them difficult to measure. It makes them easy to see sometimes, but difficult to measure. Because it's not just a checklist for us of, okay, here's the problem in the world, so let's throw some money and some food and some Bible verses at it and check it off and say that we helped somebody. Right? Right? Okay, thanks. I was worried there that I was talking to nobody. Okay, so tonight I want to spend the rest of the little bit of time that I have talking to you about empowerment and how those physical and spiritual needs can be met. Empowerment requires us to passionately and strongly believe in truth. And then we have to take what we believe and make risky choices and take courageous action that's resonant with that belief. So first I'm going to tell you what to believe. Isn't that nice? And then, then I'm going to tell you what kind of choices you might need to start making. Okay? And then you can talk to me about it afterwards if you disagree. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is this truth. Okay? So, and actually, it's really the only thing that I'm going to just talk about in different ways. So, enjoy. The truth is that you are intrinsically valuable, that you're incredibly capable, and that you're infinitely loved. And so is everyone else. Right? So, the first risky choice that you might need to make is actually believing that. Because nothing else is really going to happen until you do. I love the book of 1 Peter because I kind of love Peter. And I don't know why. A lot of people think that maybe he was kind of brash and outspoken, and some other people think that maybe he was the oldest disciple, and so he was just always the spokesperson. And that's why he just asked questions that everybody else was thinking. But in 1 Peter, when he's grown a little bit and been empowered by Jesus and the Holy Spirit, he writes to these churches in Asia Minor, which, again, some scholars are like, how are there even churches in Asia Minor? Some people think that Paul went there and other people don't. And so he's writing to these Christians of all different shapes and sizes, Jews and Gentiles and men and women, and they're most likely being persecuted or at least marginalized in society somehow. So definitely people in need of empowerment. And in 1 Peter 2, 9 through 10, he says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light." It says that once you were not a people, but now you are a people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So we're a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Sounds pretty friggin' valuable, right? We're also asked to proclaim the excellencies of him who called us out of darkness and into his marvelous light. So I think he thinks we're capable as well. And lastly, he reminds us that once you hadn't received mercy, but now you have, now you realize this infinite love that someone else has for you. So in this passage, I think that Peter is reminding followers of Christ that they're valuable and loved and called to do something in their world that proclaims the excellencies, okay? That rights wrongs and speaks truth, that empowers people to be stronger and wiser and healthier, more free, more autonomous. A sense of enlightenment starts in you when you realize that you are valuable. You start realizing, oh, I am worth something and I have purpose and there's something for me to do here, right? But empowerment starts when you start believing that others are equally valuable. This doesn't mean that we're all the same, because we're different, we're distinct in our functions, in our capabilities, in our backgrounds, but we're all equal in value. This belief doesn't just make us nice people. Like when we believe, oh, we're all equal in value, it doesn't just make us nice people that don't discriminate, right? That's not the point. It feeds into solving some of the world's most atrocious problems. Mimi Haddad is the president for Christians for Biblical Equality, and in her publication released earlier this year called Ideas Have Consequences, she says that the most prominent indicator of whether or not a girl will be sold to a brothel, killed as a fetus, abused in her marriage or family, or denied a place of decision-making in her church, community, or marriage is not based on her gender, but the value ascribed to the female gender. She goes on to say that every devaluation made at the level of being, there is a consequence in the form of marginalization, abuse, or injustice. So you see, what we believe to be true actually makes a difference. It makes a difference in our life. It makes a difference in our leadership. It has an impact. It creates a consequence. So when you choose to believe that people have equal and intrinsic value, that they're valuable because they are, not because of something that they do or something that they have, but they are valuable because they are, you create an environment and a culture where positive change can occur. Make sense? Okay. The next step, so you're with me in people are intrinsically valuable. Got it? Okay. Next step is to believe that you're incredibly capable. And this is really hard for people to do. Okay? Because we either falsely believe that we can do anything, like, 16-year-old boys that I'm mentoring at a juvenile delinquent home. Or we don't believe that we're capable, we believe that we're capable of about this much. Right? So when we start talking about this, I get really excited. Because when people start realizing what they're capable of, and you guys are all laughing at me, but when people start realizing what they're capable of and how they're distinctly different, and when they use what God's given them, they can just really, really shine, I start getting jazzed up, right? So what happens is we all have these distinct and different resources and gifts and capabilities, right? They're distinct and they're different, but they're capabilities. They're things that God's given us to do something with. And so the second risky choice that I want to ask you to make, if you're going to be an empowering servant leader, is to do something that stretches you beyond what you think you're capable of. Do something that stretches you beyond what you think you're capable of. Here's why it's risky. In stretching yourself beyond your perceived capability, you give yourself an allowance for failure, right? And a lot of us are really, really afraid of failing. It's actually sick, like how afraid we are of failing. I'm reading a book right now called Creative is a Verb. My husband says that is completely incorrect, that creative is an adjective, and he doesn't know why the woman said that, made that as the title of her book. But I like the book, and it's pretty cool. It was written by this lady named Patty Dye, and she says essentially that when we have a fear of failing, it usually arises out of two things. We're either afraid of failing ourselves, or we're afraid of failing others. And really, it's the perception of failing others that we're really afraid of. So when it's ourselves that we're afraid of failing, that prevents us from doing our best work, right? Because if you're afraid of failing yourself, you kind of say, I can go this far, and that's about it. Which doesn't drive anybody to do their best. It drives them to do okay work, right? And when we're afraid of failing in others' eyes, it actually drives us it prevents us from doing our own work or original work. Because we start saying, oh, maybe somebody won't like this, so maybe somebody won't like this speech that I'm writing, so I'm going to talk about Patty Dye and how she talks about fear of failure, because I'm not quite sure how to present it to people in a way that it makes sense, right? So it's not my own work, it's Patty Dye's work, right? But that's okay. I'm using it, and I'm up here saying it's okay to fail, right? Because if you can allow failure as a possibility in your life and in the lives of your followers, oh my gosh, you have to allow the failure for possibility, like the possibility for failure. I can't even get my words out because it's so awful, right? You have to allow the possibility for failure in the lives of your followers. That means that when you delegate something to them, they might not get it right the first time. Oh, no, right? They might fail the first time. It might happen, right? You have to allow it as a possibility in your life and in the lives of your followers while holding them in a valuing culture, okay? Don't say, hey, go out and do this. I'm going to delegate it to you. Prove to me you're valuable by succeeding, right? That doesn't necessarily work. So instead, we're going to allow and permit failure in a valuing culture. And when that starts to happen, you can actually do really creative, groundbreaking, transformative work. when you start doing that kind of work, you realize two things. One, that you actually were capable of more than you thought you were. You actually did stretch beyond that capability. And it brings a broader scope than what you might have imagined. And others, when allowed to work creatively and within their distinct capabilities, usually surprise us with both their ability and their resilience, how they can bounce back and recover and make something work. The problem is we usually let what we call a fear of failure incapacitate us before we realize what others are capable of. I could talk to anybody about that book that I read, right? That library book that I read. And it might have been really embarrassing for my mom to take this book bag and be like, I'm sorry, I got to actually pay you for this book because it's all wet, But my daughter really liked it. And because I allowed her to do that, she thought maybe something else is possible. Maybe I can read my book on the roof, too. Which I've done. Maybe I could read my book, out on the roof in the sunlight because that's how I'll learn best. Maybe I could actually write a book on a roof. Maybe other people someday will actually read the book that I wrote on a roof, right? Because my mom thought that it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail and to allow that. Marianne Williamson, and maybe you guys have heard this quote before, but she said it this way. She said that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Coach Carter was not the first person to say this. Marianne Williamson was. Neither was Nelson Mandela. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, or fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. You are meant to shine. We were all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Over and over again in Scripture, I see God enabling, equipping, and empowering His people to do everything and more that He asks us to do. Not once have I read that God will require us to do something that we're not capable of. In fact, His infinite love for us and His desire to be glorified He actually tells us in Ephesians that because of His power working in us, that we're capable and able to do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine. You can proclaim the excellencies of Him who called you out of darkness and into His marvelous light in your distinctly unique way. And you can increase the capacity and strength of others to do the same. Okay, so intrinsically valuable and incredibly capable. You guys believe in it? A little bit, at least? Okay, great, good. We got one more, right? Do you remember what it was? Infinitely loved. Good. Okay, so we need to believe that we're infinitely loved, and so is everyone else. Good. Good, you guys are such good students. I can see why your professors picked you to be here. So I really believe that holding a servant leadership paradigm and working from a strategy of empowerment cannot happen without also having love. Like it says in 1 Peter, we are now a people of God that has received mercy. My journey with God has been all about Him teaching me what love is. He shows me love, and then I think, okay, I've got it. I got it. Like, I know what love is now. And then something happens, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's it too? Oh, wow, that's it too. God, you're showing me more and more about what love is. I think I get it. And then He does it again. A lot of people actually don't realize, just like I was perplexed about not all moms like letting their kids do creative stuff, I'm also very perplexed when I meet people that haven't journeyed into God's love, or no one's ever told them about it. And I meet those people on a more frequent basis now, actually, and I just look like, seriously? I've got to tell you about it. It's awesome. His love is infinite, and let me tell you what He's done in my life and how you can be free too. Jesus showed us that all of these things aren't too difficult to accomplish. He showed us how to empower. Because of His infinite love for us, He was willing to sacrifice His position and abilities to make us stronger, healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous. He did it when He left heaven and put on flesh. And that's usually like what we think of when we think about Jesus empowering and being a servant leader. Like, He left His position, He put on flesh, He walked among us, He died for us, He rose again. But there was another time too. He did it when He left. And in John 17, He says that the Comforter, or the Holy Spirit, is actually going to be better for you than I am. Like, I'm sending you something that's better for you. And I don't think that Jesus was making that up to make them feel better, right? Because He usually told the truth, like, all the time. So being able to believe what He says is a good thing. He gave us this Holy Spirit to empower us. He gave it to us because He loves us. He knew that it was better for us. Another verse in Luke, I forget where it is, talks about how, which of you, being children, being parents, having children, would give your son a snake when he asks for a fish, or give your son a rock when he asks for bread? So much more, does my Father know how to take care of you? If you know how to love your kids and you're really jacked up, right? How much more do I know how to love you? So he says, the best thing for you is the Holy Spirit. I'm going to send that to you. It's even better than me. And it's going to indwell you, and it's going to fill you. And He gave it to us because He was His servant leader. He gave it to us because He wanted to empower His followers. He gave it to us not because He was nice. Right? Right, Bill? He gave it to us not because He was nice. It's something I learned from Bill. Dr. Millard, as some of you know him. But I'm his colleague, so I can call him Bill. Right? Right? Yeah, okay. Just making sure, Dr. Millard. Yeah. He did it not because He just read a book about how it was the coolest, best, new, trendiest way to empower His leaders. He did it because He was perfect, and because He knew truth, and because it was the most effective and efficient way to transform His world. And that's what He wants. He wants glory for Himself. I lost my stuff. He wants glory for Himself, and He wants to demonstrate His infinite love for us. He made us co-heirs with Him, empowered change agents in His world. I don't know if you guys have heard of the World Bank. Any of you guys heard of them? They're kind of a big organization, and a big international organization, and they're committed to eliminating poverty in the world, which is a pretty good cause, right? It's one of those things that need to be righted again. They're realizing something that's very interesting, I think. They're realizing that in ending poverty is actually more than giving people money to stimulate economic growth, or even teaching them how to do a trade, or giving them food, like sending over food, like is done in a lot of different places. In a study in 2008, they compared different empowerment initiatives in Jamaica and Ghana and in Bangladesh, and they were all in different areas of life, like social reform and governmental hierarchy, and one other one. There's another one. You should read the study. It's really good. But they said, basically, that as long as people still saw themselves as beneficiaries, as long as they still saw themselves as getting from their leaders. Nothing happened. But as soon as they started seeing themselves as agents, as soon as they started seeing that they were given authority to make change happen, the change started becoming sustainable. So now the World Bank is starting to think, maybe we need to give them money, but maybe we also need to create empowerment initiatives around the world. Here's what we need to realize. There are a great many things wrong with the world that must be made right. The best way to create transformative change is to empower others by operating from a servant leadership paradigm. Increasing the power or strength of someone requires us to believe that we are intrinsically valuable, incredibly capable, and infinitely, and so is. And it requires us to make risky choices based on that belief and take courageous actions that are resonant with it. So here's my question for you. What risky choices do you need to make? And what courageous action do you need to take? What risky choices do you need to make? And what courageous action do you need to take? Make them and take them. In closing, here's my prayer for you from Ephesians 5:16 through 20. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and how long and how high and how deep is the love of Christ, and to know that this love surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now, to him who can do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, right? He's going to do it through us. To him be glory in the church and in Jesus Christ throughout all generations, forever and ever. Thanks, guys.